Welcome to Love and Abuse Insights. This is an addendum to the regular show that you'll find scattered in between full episodes. On Insights, I pick random emails that I haven't addressed yet and do my best to provide my insights and opinions. Everything you hear on this show is for informational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being. Okay, welcome to the second episode of Insights, Love and Abuse Insights. Like I said in the first episode, it's pretty raw, so I'm just going to get right to the email. And going forward, when you listen to these episodes, I'll probably just start reading the emails. And again, this is an addendum show to Love and Abuse, and I'm going to have these probably quite often because I get a lot of emails. Good to connect with you. I'm going to go right into this. I'm actually going to read just the last part of this email. It's a little long, so I'm going to get to the important parts. This person wrote, I'm just going to call her J because I tried to respond to her through email and I could not reach her through email. For some reason, the email didn't work. She said, what did she say? I become desperate to show him I can be better. I guess we both made the relationship toxic. I'm not trying to excuse my behavior. I'm just wondering if an anxious person like me could possibly become worse in this type of environment. As I become more involved with him, or as I became more involved with him, it became harder for me to stand my ground, and I would just find myself doing anything to have him not upset with me. I heard in some podcasts that people pleasers will attract these type of people. Yes, so I didn't read you the whole thing, so you don't have all of the context, but I wanted to read the email that I was going to send to Jay, because I can't reach her, and she asked a specific question. Here's my response to Jay. Anytime you're begging and pleading for someone not to leave you or to be with you or to reconsider or anything like that, it comes from a desperate place and not an empowered place. I recommend listening to the Love and Abuse episode called 6 Reasons You May Feel Guilty About Leaving an Emotionally Abusive Person. Number 4 especially, because it's where I talk about making someone else your sole source of happiness. It's a desperate place that will never get satisfied, or it will eventually cause you emotional harm. And this episode of The Overwhelmed Brain, which is called, it's the email grab bag episode, Getting Ghosted While Dating and When You Have Trouble Forgiving Someone Who Wronged You. In that episode, it might be helpful because I've got some pointers in there as well. From what you described, it doesn't sound equal. He just wants you to feel like you're to blame and he has nothing to do, but you have to fix yourself. It's very egotistical and hurtful. That's not an equal relationship. Yes, people pleasers end up with takers like this. They take and give you little credit for giving. When a taker finds a pleaser, they take advantage of it to the fullest. The pleaser tries harder and harder until they get burnt out, meaning they try harder and harder to please until they get burnt out. Stay strong. You'll get through this, and listen to my episodes on The Overwhelmed Brain on people pleasers at theoverwhelmedbrain.com. You'll find a lot of my thoughts on that subject in those episodes. And I say thanks, and I wish you much strength and healing. So there's 2 things I want to talk about here. If you're in a situation where you are desperately pleading for someone either not to leave you or for someone to stay, or you're desperately pleading for them to come back, you are not in an empowered place. In fact, you are giving away your power to that person. And if this is an emotionally abusive relationship, and they've been hurtful, and they've made you feel guilty, or made you feel wrong a lot, or they say that there's nothing wrong with them and everything is wrong with you, or you need to fix yourself because they're perfect, and on and on and on. There's a lot of emotionally abusive qualities. If they've been that way, and you are desperately trying to get them back in your life or desperately trying to keep them in your life, you are continuing their abusive cycle. That is giving away your power. Anytime you're in a place of desperation, it's like you're bleeding power. You're letting it just bleed out of you. And I know it's hard because we love, right? We love, and we're so desperate to keep something we love. And we're also hurt. And how do we reconcile this? This is the love and abuse trauma response. We have a traumatic bond with the person. And so we don't want them to leave, but we want them to stop hurting us. But we don't want them to leave, but if they stay, they'll keep hurting us. So I was telling this person, when you are desperate like this, this is basically giving in to a person that takes your power and continues to hurt you. And this is a tough area because some people that listen to this show, some people in traumatic, toxic, or abusive relationships, they are desperate to find love and keep love and stay in a relationship or be in the relationship. They're desperate to not be alone. And this is what I mean by giving away your power, because when you are desperate not to be alone, or you fear abandonment, you fear rejection, you are in a very disempowered place. And like I said in my reply to her, you are looking to someone else as your sole source of energy and happiness and connection and all the things that we love when we're in a romantic relationship or any type of relationship where we feel really connected to a person. But in this case, it's a romantic relationship. We look to someone as our energy source. And what ends up happening is that we end up draining all of our energy, pouring it into the other person. And this is what I mean when you're giving away your power, you're bleeding it. And all that power, all that energy is going into the other person. This is not a healthy situation. It's a very toxic one, especially when the other person doesn't give back, because a relationship can work when you have someone else in your life that gives just as much back. I don't believe in giving your all, but I believe in equality. I believe in balance. I believe I'm going to give a lot of it to you and you're going to give a lot of it to me, but I'm still going to have enough for myself. It keeps you sufficiently supplied. You know, you want to keep your cup full, and you can empty it every now and then, just a little bit. You don't have to empty it all the way, because you still want some for yourself. You need it. But if you're pouring it out of yourself and you're just giving yourself to someone fully, you're draining yourself. And then what are you draining yourself for? If you're desperately wanting someone to stay in your life or not leave or come back, that is a lot of energy being poured out to someone who doesn't seem to be reciprocating. Again, in this case, that doesn't seem to be happening. And, you know, she brought up the people pleasing. And earlier in the email, which I didn't read, I think she has anxiety issues. She said anxious attachment. And so when we have any type of dysfunction, something that doesn't make us fully functional, doesn't mean we're broken, just means there's some functions that aren't working inside of us. Anytime we bring dysfunction into a relationship, typically in the relationship, the other person will have a dysfunction that complements our dysfunction. I just created a meme on this in my Instagram, the Overwhelmed Brain Instagram. And I said, typically, every dysfunction complements another dysfunction in someone else. So when you're a people pleaser, you can meet someone that is a taker. And so they will continue taking what you give. And people pleasers, they love to give. And so what happens is they keep giving and giving. The other person keeps taking, as I was explaining in the response I was reading. And eventually the people pleaser gets drained and completely burnt out. They reach a point where they just don't care anymore, or they're just angry. And there's a lot of passive aggressive behavior because the resentment builds, because they're not giving back. The other person's not giving back. So that's what happens with the people pleaser. And then the person with low self-worth is going to meet someone that takes advantage of that. They're going to have maybe egotistical qualities, maybe narcissistic qualities. And they're going to emphasize your low self-worth. They're going to take advantage of it by continuing to highlight that you're really not worthy, and then they'll add on the bonus, without me. You're really not worthy, you're not lovable, you're not attractive without me, so don't leave me. You are nothing without me. I'm not saying low self-worth is necessarily a dysfunction, but it's certainly not a function. It doesn't make you functional. It doesn't make you broken. But if you have a low self-worth or a lower sense of self-worth, then you are not functioning on all cylinders in a way that empowers you. That's all I really mean. Dysfunction is you're not really functioning at your full potential. I don't think I am either. We all have more potential. We all are working on something. So we work on it. And when we work on this stuff, and this is what happens, when we work on, for example, our low self-worth, and increase that self-worth, get more confident, get more confidence in ourselves, then what ends up happening is that when someone comes along and tries to make us think that we're not worthy, we feel so damn good about ourselves that we realize, wait, this person's toxic and they're telling me lies in order to what? What are they trying to do? Manipulate me? Probably. Or have control or power over me in some way? Because if I'm in this lowered state, they're going to be in this higher state and they're going to have power over me so they can basically have me reach out to them for my self-worth, because they're going to fill my cup because I can't fill my own. And if they do that, they're going to feel like they have power over me and they're going to be able to control me. So, it goes around and around. This is where the dysfunctions complement each other. How do I gain self-confidence, Paul? How do I increase this self-worth? I have episodes on that too. I want you to go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com, type in the word worth, W-O-R-T-H, in the search engine and the little search field at the top. And you'll find some episodes, and I want you to listen to those if you're dealing with that. I talk about a lot of dysfunction at theoverwhelmedbrain.com. And it's going to help if you feel somewhere in your life that you're working on something or you need to work on something, that I probably have covered it over there. And there's a lot of stuff over there. I have 9 years worth of material in those podcast episodes. In fact, that might even be a better suggestion. Go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com/podcasts with an S at the end and use that search field, and you'll be able to search every single podcast that I've created. And just look for the words that are important to you. Worth, value, love, relationships, whatever is important to you, and you'll see all the podcast episodes come up. Because the reason I'm kind of pointing you in that direction is when you bring these dysfunctions into a relationship and you have what seems like a great relationship at first, and then it turns into something more toxic, more sinister, it's typically because you brought a dysfunction or more than one dysfunction into the relationship, and it was compatible, it was complementary to their dysfunctions or toxic behaviors. And this is why it can work out so fantastic at the beginning, because there's that underlying subconscious compatibility that's going on. But it starts to show itself after the honeymoon phase, and when you start to settle down. Around month 3 or 4, when you start settling down, just an average number of months, you will start to notice any dysfunctions that you may have, because what ends up happening is a behavior occurs, usually from them, that you have a feeling about. Like, why did they do that? Did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? What's going on? And instead of asking, what's going on? Why did you just do that? We tend to let it slide, or a lot of people tend to let it slide, where we should be asking, hey, what just happened? Why did you just try to make me feel guilty? There's one. You want an empowered response. Why are you saying that? Why are you trying to make me feel guilty right now? But what happens with somebody with not so good intentions is that they try to pass it off for a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. And so this is what happens, is that you bring a dysfunction or two into the relationship, and their dysfunctions start to show up as well. And then things start to go south. But you have to notice this stuff. You have to observe what's going on and be okay questioning it. And it's not always easy. And a lot of people that listen to this show may not have been able to do that for whatever reason, or maybe didn't even know what to ask. And of course, most of the people that I hear from on this show just pass it off to a misunderstanding themselves. And they think that there's something wrong with their thinking, like the people who write to me. There must be something wrong with my thinking. Maybe I did upset them and I didn't know I did. There's all kinds of things that we come up with to try to figure out what might be happening because, again, the relationship started off so great. So I wanted to bring that up about dysfunctions complementing each other and read this person's email because I wasn't able to reply to her. She was asking a specific question I wanted to answer, and that's why I'm bringing it up on Insights. And before I go, I almost forgot. When you start working on your dysfunctions, whatever they may be, and you start becoming more, for lack of a better term, functional, more firing on all cylinders, more of your potential, what ends up happening is you attract higher quality people into your life. Perfect example is I was a people pleaser most of my life, and so people took advantage of me. They walked all over me, and I let them, and I resented them. And when I decided that I was going to start honoring my boundaries and speaking up for myself, those people didn't show up anymore. And when they did, I didn't allow them to walk on me. I didn't allow them to dishonor me. If I had a boundary, I spoke up. Perfect example is when I was in the airport once, and I was at the car rental counter, and I was doing a transaction or something, and somebody came right up behind me, right over my shoulder, very much in my physical personal space. And it was very uncomfortable. And I looked at him, and he was talking to the guy over my shoulder, and here I am filling out my paperwork with financial information and my address, and it just felt uncomfortable. The whole thing felt uncomfortable, and I didn't want him near me. And it's one of those moments, and this is a question I ask of myself every now and then. It's one of those moments where I ask myself the question, okay, what would I do if I had absolutely no fear of the consequences? And I said, I would just tell this guy to back off. And so I did that, except I did it tactfully, but I decided to just be confident, even though it was kind of a scary thing for me. I just turned around and I said, you're standing very close and it's making me uncomfortable. Could you please step back a little bit? And his expression was priceless because I could tell he was oblivious. He didn't even realize he was in my personal space. And I didn't think he did, but that isn't an excuse. I just wanted him to back away from me. And he looked at me for a second and he didn't know what to say and he was silent, and he did. He stepped back. And I went back to my paperwork. And that moment and many, many others changed my life. Because before, when I was the people pleaser, I probably would have just said, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I would have apologized. Can you relate? I would have apologized, and that would have been my sort of passive, maybe aggressive way of saying, hey, you're standing too close. What the hell? Get away from me. But instead, I chose to be what I like to look at as active assertive. I need to be assertive. I need to be active. I need to say, hey, look, you're standing a little bit close. It's uncomfortable for me. Could you please take a step to the side or back or whatever? And I did, and it worked. And this really helped me feel good about myself. That added to my functionality. I turned a dysfunction into a function. I was the people pleaser, and I'm not saying I'm never a people pleaser ever. Sometimes that comes in handy. But it does help to turn your dysfunctions into functions so you don't get taken advantage of. You don't have somebody complementing your dysfunction. His dysfunction was, I'm in your personal space and I don't care. And my dysfunction was, hey, you can get into my personal space because I'm not going to say anything. But that was my old dysfunction. My new dysfunction is, I'm going to say something. What happens? That changes the dynamic. I hope this gives you something to work with, anything I've said today, and thanks for joining me. We'll catch you on another episode of Insights or another episode of Love and Abuse.